No, we're not rolling
Do you
yet.
want to wait till we
Roll.
roll?
What the hell?
Shoot, goddammit, you bastards! Roll!
You're a director. What's going on?
Ready?
Are we going? Can we,
Roll,
now,
you
can we start
bastards.
now? Can we start your mind? Congratulations on your Oscar nominations.
Thank you very much.
Especially Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Yeah.
How did you get a performance like that out of her?
Well,
She goes there.
oh, she absolutely
She's
goes.
so ugly, it's almost poetic.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, she gets there all right. The thing about with Daisy was it was interesting with her because part of the thing is, and we talked about this early on. That's not a performance you can almost prejudge. Like if you've seen the movie, so you know that she has a lot of fireworks in the final chapter of the story, but you can't just go there. You have to. She almost has to do all the movie, all the story up until that point to get there at the right place. And I remember talking to her about it, and I go, look, this is really a character me and you need to put together. We need to live through this character together, and I don't want you to prejudge her. I think we're just going to build it little by little together, and we're going to live through it, and we'll get to where we need to go. But we just have to just keep steady the course and just keep feeling it every day and taking her further and further and further. What was wonderful about what Jennifer did in particularly, and this is one of the things that I loved about her so much, and one of the reasons why I went with her, was Jennifer never made Daisy an other. She never judged her. She never said, "Oh, I'm playing a villain." There was no judgment whatsoever. She was always preaching Daisy's side. She was always making Daisy's case, and she made herself Daisy. She was never playing this other character in a genre movie. She was Daisy for all of and embraced that.
Tell us about the importance of the timing of you making this movie, because you came off two of the most commercially successful films of your career.
Yeah.
Your agent must have been on the phone saying, "Quentin, you're in the sweet spot right now. Just keep making movies like this." Yet you made this. Tell us about the importance of the timing of this film right now in your career.
Well, the thing about it was, I actually got together with somebody who's a really good person, and they have a company or something, and we were talking about making movies, and they were trying to see about us working together, and I asked them some question, and they go, "Well, one of the reasons it would be, nice to work with you is your work is commercial." And that was like a weird thing. I mean, I knew what they meant because I just had two big hits in a row. But there was nothing commercial about them except that a lot of people went to see them, if you know what I mean. I mean, there was no guarantees that my World War II movie that was, in about 3 different languages, the least of all being English, was going to be such a hit. There was no guarantee that my very violent, bloody, funny slave movie, all right, was going to be a smash, but that ended up being in the case. Did I want them to be successful? Absolutely, I wanted them to be successful, but I wanted to make them. That was what was important. And so that really is always where I'm coming from. I'm coming from, just whatever the next story is, and I've gotten lucky enough that I can actually do what I want to do.
I mean, it was a case where you presumably built up enough credit where you could get away with making a movie like this and releasing it the way you wanted to.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think I would have been able to make this movie, pretty much under any circumstances, for the most part. But me doing it in 70 millimeter and doing it in this way, well, that was one of the things that the last 2 successes actually ended up buying me for sure.
And you did have a double agenda. You wanted to, one, introduce the old idea or reintroduce the idea of the event movie, where people would go and spend a night with a movie, and also to preserve the notion of 70 millimeter.
Well, that's for sure, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just to be absolutely clear, you're not anti-digital, are you? Because the upside of digital filmmaking, both creatively and economically, is just enormous. You want the idea of 70 millimeter as an option for filmmakers to still be alive. Is that fair?
Well, I actually think that the upside as far as financial for digital is extremely overrated. I think it's I think it's an upside for production managers, all right, who are just bean counters for the most part. And at the end of the day, by the time the whole thing is done, its process, film isn't actually that much more expensive if you actually add up the entire budget when everything is said and done. However, it helps the production managers on the actual day-to-day in making the movies. Having said that, though, there is an aspect when it comes to digital that I do appreciate. For all the things I don't like about it, there is an aspect of, when it comes to digital filmmaking itself, is it has a possibility of making films more democratic for other types of people who have never been able to make movies before, and because they requires film and lights and all kinds of stuff that maybe some kid in Dubai can get.
But this film is part of your campaign to keep the format alive.
Oh, absolutely.
As an option.
Absolutely. And and that's the number one thing that, I actually probably wouldn't have that much of a problem with digital if the whole idea wasn't that, film now needs to be eradicated for this.
You're basically saying, don't get rid of something beautiful just because it's old.
Yeah, no, I do think that this film is a pretty good argument that it's like, be careful what's going on here, because we lose this, we lose something really important.
As with comedies, Westerns tend to reflect the year, if not the decade in which they're made. What is it about this film that you think is talking about the times today?
Well, it's interesting because Westerns do that very well. And it's one of the interesting things about them. And I didn't really set out to do that per se on this film, but as I was writing it, that just started coming out of the characters' mouths to one degree or another. One of the things I actually do think that I have to offer to Westerns is the conversation I have about race that is going on in America. And that's actually a conversation that has been almost avoided, to a ridiculous amount in Westerns. And so I actually think it's something I have to offer to the genre, to have that conversation going on. And there was an interesting thing about keeping that conversation going on after Django. Nevertheless, I was still kind of doing, I still, had my idea of doing a closed room story and a bit of a whodunit, a bit of a mystery aspect of it all. But when I was writing the scene in the stagecoach, and Walton Goggins' character, Mannix, has his debate with Sam Jackson's character, Major Warren. I just started, representing Mannix's side of the the Civil War Southern side debate, have Warren representing his side. And when it was all finished, I was like, wow, that could be a blue state, red state debate going on between CNBC and or MSNBC and Fox.
Are you approaching a point where you are going to start disengaging from dealing with certain parts of the media because of an apparent inability to listen to what you're actually saying and to understand the difference between real life and the fantasy world of movies, and even your right to protest police brutality? What you've been putting up with is amazing.
Oh, well, thank you for thank you for saying
we
that.
need to get this on the record.
Yeah, I agree. Look, it is a weird thing. Look, the police brutality thing was its own thing, all right, but even just in the normal, like, profile stories or profile pieces that appear in magazines or New York Times or something like that, the way they get picked apart in this weird way is it's weird, because every time it's taken me about 3 years to do a movie. And it seems like every 3 years, the landscape has changed so drastically compared to the last 3 years that I'm caught unawares. And frankly, there is an aspect of me thinking about disengaging the next time around, because there was a time period, and don't worry, we'll give you enough time. I want to answer this question full on, okay? There was a time where you would do a profile article in, say, Vanity Fair or the New York Times or whatever, New York Times Magazine, and like the writer came down and he spent 3 days with you, and then you talked about this or that and the other, and it always was pressed, it always wasn't, but you were expressing yourself, you got a chance to, you've done something important, you hope, and you get a chance to talk about it. And then that article would appear, and there was, for lack of a better word, some artistic integrity to the fact that you started reading it at the beginning and you read all the way to the end and was all in context. And if you stuck your foot in your mouth or whatever, then you did, but it was always in a context. But now it comes out and then all the buzzwords are grabbed and picked out and thrown on about 10,000 websites, made to seem as salacious as possible with absolutely no context, making a big deal about almost everything you said, never in a context. And I don't need that. There's no upside for me in that. There is no reason to do that anymore as far as I'm concerned.
It just results in you having to make more media appearances
to
make absolutely clear what was clear in the first place.
I know. I see no benefit for it anymore. Where before there was a benefit. All right, I was expressing myself, and it was taken in the context that I was given.
Howard Hawks, one of your favorite directors.
Yeah.
One of his best movies was Hatari, a family film.
Mm-hmm.
Describe a Quentin Tarantino family film. What would it be like?
Well, I've flirted with the idea of doing a family film. The reason I never have is because I've never really come up with a story per se. But there is an aspect to it that I do like. Is I remember, here's the aspect that I like. If you actually make a movie that connects with kids, they'll love it. They'll see it 10 times, 12 times. I remember working at Video Archives. And I remember the kids would come in and they want to keep renting the same movie over and over again. And the parents got mad at them. Look, would you get something else? I'm tired of seeing the same thing. You've seen this movie 12 times. Well, I kind of knew where they were coming from. They go, well, I know I'm going to like this. I don't know if I'm going to like that one that you're holding. And, even something like the Mighty Ducks or something, the kids saw it and they really liked it and they loved it and they saw it a bunch of times and they became rabid, voracious fans of that. Well, I like the idea of somebody being a rabid, voracious fan of one of my movies. So far, I haven't come up with the subject matter where the two go together. But if I ever did, that would be very exciting.
Right. When's the big payoff point for you? Is it box office figures? Is it when you start making the film? Or is it that moment when you finish the screenplay, put the last word on it and go, that's it, it's done? When's the big payoff point for you?
The last one. The last one, when I finish the script. When I think it's done, when I feel it's done, and I'm ready to hand it out to people and say, this is my next piece of work. That kind of is, that's the first big payoff. Actually, the next payoff after that is, and this is not hyperbole, this is the truth. It's watching it with an audience, all right? And because I hear laughs, I hear I make movies that I'm gonna get an audible response from the audience. And so when I'm actually sitting there, and it's not a premiere audience, it's not one of those pre-screening things, but it's actually a bunch of people who could do anything in the world they wanted to do that night, but what they decided to do was go and pay to see my movie.
Do critics matter to you anymore?
I like reading film criticism. I know my movies pretty well. So if you're just off the rails, or you just don't like me, or you have an axe to grind, that's not going to get to me. But but I'm also curious about what people have to say about stuff and everything, and maybe somebody has something that's enlightening.
The fact that things don't get to you is very, very admirable. I think people are very surprised that you haven't been derailed with all this white noise that surrounds you.
I haven't been derailed, but I have to say it's been a thing this time. It's been a thing that I didn't think I'd have to deal with, and I don't like it.